I like to think we're all a smart group of people. And if we all come to the same consensus about said players, there's probably some merit there. There's probably something that and I'm not saying you should listen to us, worst guy. That's not what I'm saying though. But we all like know how to watch film. We know how to, we know what to look for, right? Now, I think it just comes down to what you like, respectfully.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to, and that's what we talked about before, them having a type and them having their sort of, I guess, their type of player that they would like to draft, the player that fits said mold. I just think that what's the kid's name that we literally talked about
Position
last year, the guard from Kansas State, Cooper Beebe.
Yeah.
We all were standing on the table. Me and Evan were like, yo, this dude.
But he had short arms, Malik.
This dude is a guy. But you drafted Billy Price. So what do you drafted Billy Price to play center? A guy that has to snap the ball, then reach. Like, to me, that it just the logic doesn't make a lot of sense. So I don't know. I think sometimes I think sometimes they kind of like,
you put yourself in a box.
Yeah,
you box yourself in. It is good to have barometers, right, for metrics to where, like, hey, generally, if a guy is not hitting these points that we want to hit, he's not a fit for us, or it's more likely he's going to be an outlier, and it's more of a dice roll. And we would rather take a chance on the 5 and 10 guy and not the 2 and 10 guy, right? And I get that, but at the same time, you do have to kind of look at a consensus board, because when you do studies looking back at how great are GMs versus how great is the top 50 consensus mock draft boards or big boards all put together, consensus is better consistently. You're going to have that one year where you get the 2012 Seahawks, the 2017 Saints, where you draft 4 or 5 guys who end up being, all pros in their first 3 years or Pro Bowls in their first 3 years, right? But then the next 2 years, you fail miserably. You have picks like LJ Collier in the first round, right? And that's where you can have your own personal board for your scheme, for your talent, for your vision, but you need to look at outside opinions to kind of say, hey, are we way too high on this guy? Okay, that means talking to my friends around the league who I've scouted and talked to and worked with on other teams, right? Because they all talk to each other, and looking at these consensus and big boards and media mock drafts of people who are talking to people in the league, I can see that they value Drew Sample as a 5th rounder. So I don't have to take him in the 2nd round, even though I like him. So let me adjust my board a little bit and put him as a maybe 3rd to 4th round prospect. And now you're making better choices because you considered outside opinions. It doesn't mean you take their board as gospel and just use the consensus board, but it does mean to use other people as resources to fact check yourself, because getting in this echo chamber, Malik wants outside opinions. He wants people with diverse backgrounds because they're going to give him a lot of different opinions and ways to think about things. Whereas if he just gets a bunch of people who tell him the same thing that he just said, that's not helpful to him to have 3 other people who are just going to parrot back whatever Malik said and go, yep, that's a great idea, do it, and not offer any other kind of pushback or alternative solutions. Like, you get better by considering those. So I think they need to do that more.
Me and Daniel, we dead ass, and we're by no means a scouts or nothing like that. We disagree on players all the time. We disagree on Mikael Williams.
Yeah.
I think we disagree a little bit to a degree on James Pierce Jr. Right? Like and that's okay. It's that's what the healthy discussions are for. Then we come together and we talk about how it could fit. Like right now, just so people can get an in-depth look on what the TWSN team is doing before we head out of here, is we're actually building up a board essentially of how the Bengals view players and how, like, it's sort of like what their type is, what their type has been historically. And we're kind of tailoring it toward that. But we also have what we would do. Logan and Daniel are heading that up, right? We're tailoring it to what we would also do, but we're also aligning it with what the Bengals have done historically and what they probably might continue to do, because I got to think that's a philosophical change that needs to take place. Now, it's going to be curious. I'm going to be curious to see, does Al Golden have more control of what said happens than Lou happened, right? Right. Like, I'm really curious to see what happens with that. But like, one thing I could tell you is, it's going to take for the Bengals to get this thing correct. It's going to take a collaborative effort. Right. There's no one way to do things. I think that maybe they should learn from this process. And I think, it's weird. I feel like the Bengals, depending on how much success you have, with the team, I think that's when they give you more autonomy. Right. And that might sound, I don't think you just get that going in. I think, but for a guy like Al Golden, who probably had his opportunity to stay at Notre Dame, he probably comes in with a little bit more ability to do so. Remember, Lou was kind of working with his hands tied behind his back to a degree because of the losing seasons to start when he first got there. And then you had he survived the rift with the players, right? With Carlos Dunlap and the Carl Lawsons and all that kind of stuff like that. So there was a lot kind of like borrowed time. And then it was like, oh, wow, he's one of the more respected defensive coordinators in the league. And it's like, all right, maybe we should trust this guy a little, even though we're not going to bring Jesse Bates back. Then when you start to lose, you see how quickly you fall out of favor. And so this is a pivotal year for Zach. But one thing I want y'all to catch, the Bengals never came out with a statement saying, we believe in Zach Taylor. We're behind Coach Taylor. We're blah, 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 blah. He's very much on the hot seat. He very much has to get to the playoffs this year. Now, if they get to the playoffs next year, I expect them to release that statement saying, we support Zach Taylor bringing him back, because at that point, I think he'll be happy. He might even be this might even be a lame duck year, from my understanding. It might be. I know some people think he's under contract 2 years. I think he's under contract 1 year with an option. That's what I think. A team option. We'll see.